Will do. Now, you have to hand it to the well-known environmental activist and Guardian writer, George Monbiot. He's always been willing to try new things. He risked the wrath of Green allies by turning from opposing nuclear power to supporting it, for example. Or more memorably, on this very programme, he demonstrated how to cook a dead squirrel, one that had been hit by a car. Well, in his latest career circumvolution, he has devoted himself to a musical project on loneliness. He's produced an album with folk singer Ewan McLennan called Breaking the Spell of Loneliness. I think probably Ewan McLennan's done most of the music side of things. We'll hear a bit of that shortly. But first, George Monbiot is with me. Evening. So it's all started because you wrote a piece in The Guardian on loneliness, and it sort of had more impact than you'd realised.
Yes, it went viral, and I had all these publishers got in touch and said, would you write a book about it? I thought, yeah, great. You know, spent 3 years sitting in social isolation, writing about social isolation. What's the second prize? And then it struck me, well, I want to do something about it, but I want to do something which actually engages people and brings them together rather than a sort of solitary pursuit of reading. And of course, well, music does that better than almost anything else.
But is loneliness trending up? I mean, is there more loneliness than there ever was? I mean, do we have evidence on that says that?
The data is quite poor quality, actually, because we haven't used the same metrics across the sort of past 40, 50 years. But the sort of spotlight figures suggest, yes, A, there's a massive problem, and B, certainly in some age groups, it seems to be escalating. And it's accompanied by a huge amount of mental health disorders at the same time.
And your theory as to what has caused that is to do with our economy and to do with neoliberalism, to use a phrase we just heard in the last piece, to do with a kind of an individualistic economic ethos.
It's part of it. Technology has made big differences as well, but we have a sort of dominant ideology which says you're all individuals now. Way you should be self-starters, you should be sole traders, you should be self-made men and women, you don't owe anything to other people around you. Competition is the defining characteristic of humanity. That's how we should see ourselves. We're fundamentally quite selfish. Other people are just a threat.
Now, these are all things that you've always criticised. Yeah. So let me give you some other theories as to why loneliness might grow. Well, the family isn't what it used to be, people would say. The 1960s came along and we all became very permissive and consumerist in our treatment of human relationships. Do you attach any weight to those other theories?
I do, and I think they all mesh. I don't think these are exclusive explanations at all, and I think, you know, those ones that you've mentioned actually sort of reinforce the trends that I'm talking about and the push towards individualism. But you know, whatever the underlying or the major reasons might be for it, this is a huge problem, which is greatly under-discussed.
Or you could just be overestimating the problem because you're thinking about loneliness as going bowling together, but people don't go bowling together anymore. They do other things, like they're WhatsApping to each other on their phones. They may not even be in the same room because the world has changed, and maybe social relationships have just evolved with that.
There's a difference actually between being physically isolated from people and being lonely. Some people are perfectly happy living on a desert island, suits them absolutely fine. What loneliness is a feeling of emotional pain that you get from being cut off from other people. And so when people are surveyed about it, you see this very high proportion of the population that is lonely, and that is a really big problem. I mean, emotional pain is so great for many people that they would much rather have physical pain.
Well, but hence the project. George, thank you very much indeed. That's it for tonight. I'll be back on Monday, but let us get Ewan McLennan to play us out with one of the songs from the Breaking the Spell of Loneliness album, co-written by George. This one is called Such a Thing as Society. Have a nice weekend.
If I am to win, then you have to fail. It's each for himself, they've spun us the tale. If I am to live, then you have to die. This, my friend, is the time-honored lie. This, my friend, is the time-honored lie. There is such a thing as society. It keeps us from losing our minds. It's working and living and laughing together that makes us humankind. In the glitter of gold and the silver charade, we see ourselves in the image they've made. Have we fought for the scraps since the very first day? Do we really believe there's no other way? Do we really believe there's no other way? There is such a thing as society. It keeps us from losing our minds. It's working and living and laughing together that makes us humankind. It's not who we are, it's not how we live. In the depths of disaster we hurry to give. We lend our hand to strangers we meet. We go without so that others can eat. We go without so that others can eat. There is such a thing as society. It keeps us from